Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our another meeting, EMCCA's Audit and Governance Committee. Welcome to everyone, and a very warm welcome to Sanjit and Michael, who are, thank you, this is from EMCCA, who are here for the first meeting, and actually a number of other councillors as well who are here for the first meeting. So perhaps maybe we could start with the introductions. I'm Shel Shah, I'm the independent chair of this meeting.
And I'm Councillor Cecile Wright, and I'm the Vice Chair for the this committee.
I'm Julie Harris, I'm the Interim HR and OD Director for EMCCA.
Councillor Sam Smith, Leader of the Opposition at Nottinghamshire County Council.
Councillor Jim Vernon, on governance and ethics at the county.
Councillor Michael Edwards, Nottingham City.
Martin Shipley, Central Midland Audit Partnership. We provide the internal audit service.
Mark Surridge, Audit Partner at Forvis Massage, your external auditors.
Councillor Steve Carr, Broxow Council, Chair of Audit Standards.
Councillor Lewis Whitbread, Spield, represent Aslan, Northern Ward.
Councillor Mark Cliff, Derbyshire County Council, Vice Chair of the Governance Standards Committee.
Councillor Chris Payne, High Peak.
Hi, Councillor Margaret McGeehan. I'm sorry I've arrived late. I've been trying to get in this building for 10 minutes. Derby City Council.
Councillor Naya Patel, Nottingham City Council, Chair of Audit and Standards.
Judy Staton, Chesterfield Borough Councillor, Cabinet Member for Governance.
Sole Director of Legal, Governance and Compliance and Monitoring Officer at EMCCA.
Michael Edley, Senior Governance and Scrutiny Officer.
Hi, I'm Richard Williams. I'm the Executive Director of Resources at EMCCA, also the Authorities Section 73 Officer, which means I'm the Chief Financial Officer.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Apologies for absence. Have you received any apologies? Not full house. The minutes of the last meeting. Any observations, any questions or matters arising from the minutes? Councillor Edwards.
Chair, I know it's our job to be really hard-minded and tough and to spot all the errors. I'm only going to mention this one because I'm not entirely sure what else I'm going to be able to say during the whole committee. But you've missed council off in front of Graham Chapman's name in the minutes.
Status matters.
Apologies for that. Yeah, he's indeed a councillor and has been for probably a very long time.
Yeah, I did flag this on the emails, but I've still got Councillor Dave Allen, Derbyshire County Council, and he shouldn't be on the list. He was.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other observations or comments? Declarations of interest. Sorry, I've moved on. I jumped the agenda slightly. We should have a declaration of interest before the minutes. This meeting is actually live streamed, and we hope that everybody's happy with that. If not, please let sort of Sanjit know. So the first substantive item of the meeting, the annual statement of accounts, which is on page 8 of your papers.
Yeah, so would agree this is a bit of a tidy up following the last audit committee on the 11th of July when we presented the statement of accounts for 24-25, the full year accounts, and also the relevant annual governance statements. We did not present to the committee the accounts for the part year 23-24 without over rehearsing the saga that we went through last time. Our intention had been to produce an extended period accounts covering both this short period and the full year. due to the legislative oversight that we describe and set out in this paper, and I reported last time, we were obliged to produce 2 sets of accounts. We were able to produce the full year 24-25 draft accounts within the called the statutory backstop dates, 30th of June. We decided to prioritise getting those complete, and so inevitably the I call the stub accounts, or this short period accounts, the 23-24 delayed, well, not delayed, but deprioritised. We wanted to hit that publication date of the 30th of June. So these accounts were published on the authority's website on the 4th of August 2025, and they are coming to you formally now for consideration. What happens next is that we will be looking to finalise both sets of accounts in February. But as Mark Surridge from our external auditor will explain later, we have agreed a specific and recommended approach to how we deal with the 23-24 accounts and the 24-25 accounts in terms of their finalisation and their audit. I won't steal Mark's thunder, but there is some reference to that in this report in terms of dealing with those accounts. So I formally present these accounts to the committee.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this item? I appreciate we've had this item before as well, but this is actually the draft set that is, I was going to say to be audited, but to be presented to the external auditors and for the opening balances. So, thank you, Richard, and your team for all the negotiations and everywhere to get to this stage with the accounts. The recommendation we have is to note the certified draft statement of accounts for 23-24. Are we happy with that? Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is item 7, which is the amendments to the Officer Code of Conduct in the Constitution. Can I invite Sanjit or Julie?
Okay, thank you. So our recommendations here are to note the changes and approve the amendments to the Constitution, and this is the Officer Code of Conduct. So why have we updated it? We want to reinforce some high standards of integrity, professionalism and public trust. We want to make sure there's a clearer framework for expected behaviours and responsibilities, and we want to address some of the emerging risks and expectations that are currently in the workplace. So things like cybersecurity, I think it's really important that we update the code to recognise that. Now these amendments, if approved today, will be supported by mandatory training and making sure that everyone's signature is there to indicate their understanding. So I appreciate you've read through the paper and the policy. There are 8 key changes and additions, and I'll just pull those out so that everyone's clear. So the first thing is around behavioural expectations. So there are clearer standards for conduct both in and out of work. So what we expect from people in and out of work. Respect, professionalism and non-discrimination. So being an inclusive employer, what we expect around that. We've included some guidance around dress code. So we didn't have that in previously. We've also included some guidance around fitness for duty and health and safety responsibilities. We have introduced a gifts and hospitality policy, and that's aligned to the Bribery Act 2010, and that clarifies acceptable practice and refers people to Sanji if they're unsure around the gifts and hospitalities that may be offered or for us to provide. As I said before, it's really important that we update in terms of modern workplace. So we have additions around digital conduct and info security. So new standards around email, internet, social media and data protection. And that's also to reinforce the use of EMCCCA systems and platforms. We've got clearer guidance around conflict of interest and secondary employment, and then protocol for officers who are also elected members. So there is also a protocol that supports the code of conduct. The 6 changes around social media use, so breaching confidentiality, damaging EMCCA's reputation and violating any of the policies. So we've done some significant training around that, as you can imagine, just because of the increase of the use of social media. 7th point is around legal compliance and off-duty conduct, and that's around any criminal offences, but also off-duty behaviour as well. And then finally, we just clarify how the code of conduct links to our disciplinary and grievance procedures, so that people are really clear that the constitution and the grievance and disciplinary policy do link together. As you can imagine, it's all kind of legally aligned to Equality Act, the whistleblowing and to data protection and GDPR rules as well. So I think that probably covers the key amends and changes, but I'm happy to take any questions.
And what were the changes for the whistleblowing?
There weren't changes to whistleblowing. Yeah, there weren't changes to whistleblowing.
Just one question on page 2. Bullet point 1. You mentioned members of the public, or the document mentions members of the public. So it doesn't go on to mention members of the public in bullet point 4.
Can you just help me out?
So on page 2, standards of behaviour. EMCCA expects certain, and then there are bullet points in the document. First bullet point says treat colleagues, customers and members of the public with dignity and respect, which I completely agree with. But when you get to bullet point 4, the members of the public appear to have been left out. So you see, I guess my point is it's either customers that inevitably includes members of the public, or you have to mention members of the public again.
Yes, yeah, I get your point.
Does that make sense?
Just make perfect sense.
Yeah, Chair, you're going to love me today. Under dress code, it's aim, written as with is aim. I think this should be it's as a possessive, not. I mean, you know, you can thank it.
I'll thank you now.
I'm trying to remember. I'm looking to you because you've got a much better memory than me. I thought Graham Chapman at a previous meeting raised this emphasis on officers there being a requirement to tell the truth. And I can't remember if it was raised here or if it's some other meeting that I've been at with Graham, because this is the stuff about Hillsborough. So my question is, does the does the can't be bothered, but you know, people are watching. I want to hear every word. The Hillsborough thing that's been passed, does that have a new obligation? Does all these policies be updating the light of the Hillsborough legislation that's on its way?
So I think we can make reference to that, but we do have the Nolan principles which cover that.
Do they enough?
Should do.
They're doing it.
Would you take that one away, please?
Yeah, we will.
Integrity, theory.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. The Nolan principles.
Well, I just seem to remember Graham at the first meeting that we had at this committee really making the point about this new obligation on people to tell the truth, and it's just the Hillsborough things reminded me of it.
Thank you, councillors. We'll follow that. We'll go back to the notes and the notes. I think it's quite important that, you know, we have a refresher of this code of conduct for officers, especially because growing, we're getting more officers joining the council and officers also be coming across from other authorities. How are we planning to publicise this within them?
Yes, so as I said, we will be doing mandatory training and communication cascade around the whole of around 20, so it'll be for everybody. And this applies to agency workers as well as employed colleagues as well. So everybody will get some training, everybody will need to sign to say they understand the policy, and obviously we'll communicate alongside that.
Can I just ask, you know, under equality and diversity, it says, I think the last line says offend people. Now, in meetings, I might be offended if not everybody agrees with me. And that's, offend is quite an open, broad thing. Does the Equality Act use the word offend, or can we take that out or amend that word? Because everyone can be offended about everything. I was offended there was no milk when I made me tea this morning.
Right.
You know, I went and got me milk. But do you know what I mean? That leaves it wide open for officers to be called in front of whatever disciplinary. So does the Equality Act use the word offend? If it doesn't, can we just take that out?
I will check. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head the whole of the Equality Act, but I will check that, Sam, and I can also, you know, it's our code of conduct, so we can look at that.
Thank you. Just think it leaves you wide open.
Yeah, I think sometimes it is very much a kind of how it's been received, and the intent and the reception are different, aren't they? So yeah.
If the council had that policy, I'd be in all the time.
Short walk.
It's a useful point. Thank you. I will look.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any other questions or observations?
Just wanted to raise,
Councillor Wright.
yes, I just wanted to raise a matter. I don't know whether it applies specifically to employees as such, but I was thinking here of liability within the remit of health and safety. People, employees work from home. If someone was working at home and had an injury whilst conducting EMCCA's business, where does the liability fall?
So that's we have DSEs and risk assessments, so that those are carried out. So people are aware that if they have an accident at home, they need to follow the same procedure as if they were in the office. Accident report, and then we go through the same process.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, it's just more of a technicality than anything, but there's a number of codes and regulations referred to inside the document, which is fine. But that also means by extension, there either needs to be a mechanism to monitor in case any of those regulations ever change to update the policies, or to include a phrase along the lines of amended, if ever amended.
No,
To avoid a legal technicality 10 years down the line. Look.
No, it's a really good point. Thank you. And we do put in the code of conduct that it's not exhaustive and that we will update it on an annual basis. So, and obviously if legislation happens between that review, we'll update it, but I'll make sure that's in there as well.
One down the line, not mentioning them by name and saying appropriate regulation and listing them elsewhere, but you do you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKean. Welcome to the.
Yeah, apologies.
If there's no other questions or observations for Mr. Julie, can we agree to the recommendation, which is note the changes and amend the Constitution as set out in Appendix A. Thank you. The next item is our external auditors update and audit strategy. Before we
so we have included a brief cover report on this. This is essentially for our external auditor to set out, first of all, the approach to auditing our 23-24 accounts, which we've just covered earlier in the agenda, and 24-25 draft accounts that we covered at the last meeting. And it's also to cover a memorandum of agreement between ourselves in terms of the approach to that audit. I'll stop there and hand over to Mark, who will provide the detail of those items. So there's a short cover report, and then the two items from Mark are also appended to the agenda. Mark.
Thank you, and happy to take any questions as we go through. There's two parts to this report. First part is the financial year ended March 2024, where we've set out some of the background to the backstop legislation, which many of you may be familiar with. If you would like to expand on this, then please just ask a question. Given the timing surrounding the 23-24 financial statements, we intend to issue a what's called a disclaimed opinion, which doesn't say the accounts are right, it doesn't say they're wrong, it says that we don't have sufficient time to audit them because the deadline has passed.
We will then roll into the audit of the 24-25 financial statements. I'll come on to that in a little bit because we've got a plan in place for that. Sitting in and around the legislative framework for what's called rebuilding assurance, we will be we are performing that work at the same time. We've put in there that we would it will allow us to issue an unmodified opinion on the 24-25 financial statements ahead of the deadline. I should always say that that is depending on the evidence that we gather, the opinion will go. It's not to insinuate anything, it's just to be clear that we don't conclude until we finish the work. We are still required to issue something called the value for money auditor's annual report on commentary, and we're on track to bring the draft of that by November. Also, that point, I won't. All that point to take any questions related to 23-24, and then I'll talk about the plan for 24-25, if that's okay.
Questions for Mark?
Right, so I will continue. So the next report, which is very, very long, is the required audit strategy memorandum for 24-25. We've issued a draft of this and discussed the approach with officers throughout, but this is the first meeting where we could report to you. There are many aspects to this, of which I will broadly summarise that our engagement responsibilities are set out by statute and required to carry out what's called a full audit under the Code of Audit Practice. So I've been here a number of times. You've met some of my team. We are carrying out the audit work in line with the timetables anticipated. That work is ongoing. But we still expect to have that all completed in advance of the backstop, and we will report the finding of the work to you in due time. In terms of our section 4 of our report, talks a little bit around materiality. Again, this is just more for information that we examine the accounts and make a professional judgment over what we think is significant. Given it's this is a relatively new organisation, the inherent risk of being a new organisation is we set a slightly lower threshold for materiality in the first year. That's not uncommon, it's just a factor of you being new. Section 5 of our report goes into the financial statement risks. And this is based on us being able to have a look at the financial statements and complete our planning work, which includes walkthroughs of underlying systems and controls. The main audit risk in 24-25 is called the management override of controls. It is a mandatory risk in every single audit. It's not specific to yourselves, it is a feature. And in particular, we will look at the underlying significant accounting estimates that are in the financial statements. We will perform tests around journal entries, which is just entries into the financial statement that could move numbers around manually, and reviewing the underlying transactions for what we would consider something that is outside the normal course of business. We do other, there is another area of risk that we did look at, and there's something called revenue recognition. Through the auditing standards, we've considered that revenue recognition, as in it is not a significant risk for the organisation because it is not complex in 24-25, relatively simplistic. But there are two other areas of particular focus in our audit. The first being the implementation of a new accounting standard that is sweeping across the whole of the sector, and it's new, compared with a new organisation, it's something we want to make sure we looked at. And then obviously there's the process of what's called rebuilding assurance, which is performing sufficient and appropriate testing on opening balances. The rest of the report really doesn't talk about too much else other than the required confirmations, and section 8 is the one that I'd normally to confirm to you that we've undertaken our independence and objectivity tests, which stays live until the date we issue the opinion,
and there are no matters impeding our independence. I am happy to stop at that point.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Vernon.
Yeah, unusually for me, certainly, we're starting from zero with
Yes.
it. So there's a lag. And as we're going through that lag, you're recognising risks. I think we have to jump back to find risks. We could arrive well downstream and then realise something's gone wrong. We have a mechanism for that. A live, evolving mechanism.
Yeah. When you say risks, could you just give me an example just so I can make sure I answer?
Right. As I said, we're starting from zero, so this is a new one on me. Suppose you discover there is a gap in the way that the audit is verifying certain things.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously we're carrying out that work now. If we find a gap that is historic, it's our responsibility to consider its significance. It could be something small, it could be something big. Our process then is to discuss that with officers, and we would bring that back to you as a committee. You can't go back in time to fix something, but you can implement it from the point at which if there was a need to, there would be an opportunity to do that and learn from that prospectively.
Is it a rolling review or just? So
our work, I was going to say, it's almost like a piece of string. We finish when we finish. But typically, the majority of the work is conducted over now and will the past month and should be finished in the next month. So we will stop and report at that point, and then we'll come back in about 6 to 12 months. That does not negate the need for internal controls and processes to be ongoing and pick up matters as they arise.
Found any?
To this point, we haven't discussed the outcome of the audit through and a closure meeting. So due process is we discuss matters with officers to discuss, agree, and approach, and then come back to members. So I don't want to negate the proper process.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. When in addition to external audit, you've got Martin Shipley and internal audit, who are obviously doing a continuous review of the systems and the whole control framework as well. And the materiality would be a lot lower in terms of what Martin does, as internal audit does, as opposed to the external auditors.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions or Councillor Edwards?
Yeah. How many days' work are you billing for this?
So we don't bill on a day basis. There's an audit fee, which is set by public sector audit appointments, not ourselves. It takes what it takes.
And I think one of the things that is troubling me about risk analysis in the audit sector, in local government generally, is this sense of how quickly it becomes issue management rather than risk analysis. Will you be keeping a log of the risks that you spot and therefore avoid becoming an issue?
So our approach will be to consider the risks, form appropriate tests over those risks, and those conclusions will come to the committee ultimately.
I mean, the other point is a bit trivial. So I've got a track record on this already, so not really have another go. But I mean, you just like the external auditors at Nottingham City, these formats of these reports. I mean, how many gallons of blue ink have died on this one? I don't understand why there's this emphasis on using it. It's okay if we can do it on screen. But then one of the things we find with these reports is by the time you put it page width, you can't actually read the content very clearly. And we have this at City Council as well. External auditors have this format that clearly compels when it's a glossy brochure. But in terms of practically enabling people to read the document sensibly, just doesn't do it. And I just wondered, do you ever consider how this report gets perceived in terms of the way it's actually readable?
We do, and more often than not, we get positive confirmation that our readable. They do what they need to do. The length of them is driven by auditing standard. The font size is fairly typical and designed for reading on the screen.
Well, you know, maybe that's why I haven't found any its errors in this report. Maybe you haven't made those mistakes, but it is something I just don't understand why. You get it all the time. We produce these reports, obviously written so that they're A4 landscape and may well be legible, but if you're trying to read the full screen, tough work unless you do more of the column sort of stuff. So it would just be my observation, but it's an observation that applies to all companies, and you'll be appreciated that I made the same complaint at the Nottingham City Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. You mentioned about the fee for audit, Councillor Edwards. The PSA are actually consulting on next year's and future years the fees as it would apply to all public sector organisations who sign up to, well, PSA I think represent probably majority or 90% of the sector. But I can circulate that consultation.
No, it's okay. I mean, just you're working to assess them and I understand it sort of thing. But that's so I don't think it needs any more. But I just think it needs to be checked.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mark, or the external auditor? Councillor Werner.
Got one written down, it's from my deputy, so if I get it wrong. Do we or you have unrestricted access to all the authority records?
Yes.
Thank you. Simple.
Incidentally, the next item is internal audit charter, which probably also states a similar.
It's landscape actually. More luck than judgment.
I've got one question.
So
I increasingly see the mayor of the East Midlands Combined Authority talking to the mayors of the other combined authorities about sort of joint working. So a lot of that is transport that goes across boundaries between, say, Sheffield and Chesterfield or the High Peak and Manchester. How, I think it was at the first meeting, we talked about the oversight of those spends where you were reliant on other authorities participating in the spend. And I think we elevated the oversight in that document to the chief exec of the combined authority to make sure that you couldn't see drift between different mayoral authorities. You interact with the other audit functions of those authorities where spend is and spend outcome are shared.
So our focus, short answer is our focus is what are the numbers in this authority's accounts. So that's what we're interested in. Through the work we do on our value for money arrangements, we would consider there is oversight on projects. But you wouldn't, those are separate statutory independent bodies. In some cases we are the auditors of, in some cases we're not.
Interesting, because I see that as a significant risk.
Richard, do you want to?
All I would add from an EMCCA perspective is of course there will be a number of examples where we work in partnership, including with other mayoral authorities, where we do commit spend as part of that partnership. That spend will go through our normal budgeting and financial management procedures and sign-offs. And if of sufficient value, will require my sign-off. Second point, just to make very briefly, is that in terms of how these things are set up statutorily, Mayor has a dedicated budget for those type of activities where she's engaging with other mayoral authorities. And then, as I say, if we then decide to formally enter a partnership and do some joint work together, it's fed through the normal financial management.
So just to be clear why I asked that question, but in here it says the significant risk is overrides and people making overrides to budgets. And at that level, you've just said it ends up more at a mayoral level to make those overrides. So note what you said. But, you know, the part of the area that I sort of come from, which is right up in the High Peak, right up against the Manchester border.
Yeah.
We are reliant on some of those transport agreements. And given that there is a significant risk stated in this document about overrides, I think what you've just said is that the mayor has the override.
No, I didn't know. So to be absolutely clear. So for example, if we look at something like the Peak Pass, that's a good example where we are funding a specific initiative to enable college students to take their education in the Greater Manchester. That is funded through the EMCCA organisation and is subject to our own financial procedures and was duly agreed and approved through the EMCCA board as an initiative that we are supporting.
Yes, I understand that. One of the ones that was in my mind as having the potential for fraud. So because you're reliant on another authority, to some extent giving you numbers on the number of people using the pass. So there is a financial incentive for another authority in there, in that interaction. So all I'm looking for is for someone to say, yes, we'll think about that. That's it.
Yes, we will think about that. I think that's something I will discuss with Martin as our internal auditor.
Just if I may, so that you're not confused, you talked about override of budgets. That's not what our risk is. Our risk is overriding transactions in the financial ledger.
Okay, well,
so control to mispost things. So if something's exceeded budget, that's not an override.
From a more commercial experience that I have, it normally starts with someone overriding the budget and then going, I need to change the numbers somewhere else in the reporting. So I see connections between these things. Okay.
Presumably, pick up on the point you made. The lower tier local authority should have its own systems in place to prevent fraud.
It should do, but if you use the example of the pass, for example, so I was reading in a previous document that the money for the roundabout at Fairfield in Buxton has moved one place to another. So there's lots of things that I see being spoken about between the mayors that don't necessarily ever touch High Peak or ever touch anybody in Derbyshire County Council ever actually looking at them.
Because the money's going elsewhere.
Yes. Anyway, I've got it's noted. We'll look at it. It's fine.
Thank you. I was going to add that when we had the discussion about risk, we did talk about partnership risk, and I think it's a substantive piece of report for the November meeting on this.
Yeah, and I also took the point. This is at a very formative stage, so as you go through it, you'll see more things. Yeah.
There's no more questions, observations. The recommendation we have is to note the external audit update and specifically the audit strategy memorandum. The next item, which is item 8, is the internal audit charter. Martin, do you want to take us through the report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It should be quite straightforward, this one. It follows on from my presentation at the last committee about the new global internal audit standards. It's a short covering paper and then the main report from CMAP with respect to the charter and mandate. The global internal audit standards requires approval of the internal audit charter and mandate by the board. The standards define the board as the highest body charged with governance within an organisation. For EMCCA, that's the Audit and Governance Committee. The charter is a formal document that defines internal audit's purpose, authority and responsibility. CMAP reviews the charter on an annual basis and takes this to each partner's audit committee for approval throughout each year. Prior to approval from each one of the audit committees, it goes before the CMAP operational group for approval. This approval took place on the 4th of June 2025. The purpose of the charter is to set out the function of internal auditing, demonstrate our commitment to adhering to the global internal audit standards, identify our mandate, which is the legal right to conduct the internal audits, and set out the organisational position and reporting relationships. The mandate for the provision of internal audit services in a devolved authority is found in 2 pieces of legislation. The 85 Local Government Act, Section 73, and the Accounts and Audit Regulations 2015. You want to have a look through the actual charter, page 89 of your papers, page 4 and 10 of the charter identifies internal audits, roles, responsibilities. It identifies the commitment to adhering to the global internal audit standards. Page 90 identifies our authority to undertake internal audit work. That gives a breakdown of section 73 there and how that fits into it within the devolved authorities. The accounts and audit regulations is on the same page. Our independence and objectivity commences on page 91 and gives a breakdown of it there, which works quite well with respect to the audit partnership. CMAP's an independent body to EMCCA. We conduct internal audits for a number of partner organisations. So I don't report directly into Richard. I'm a separate entity, so it gives us that complete independence. So there's no influence over our findings and what we report, both to management and to the committee. On bottom of page 92, and for the remainder of the charter, it identifies organisational position and reporting relationships, which are internal audit relationships and responsibilities, and those of EMCCA. That's all I'm going to say on that. Has anybody got any questions, please?
Thank you, Martin. Any questions?
Thanks, Chair. It might be a stupid question. So under the combined authority, we operate under a chief finance officer or a section 151 officer.
It's a section 73 officer under devolved authority. It's a separate power. With respect to, if you look at page 90 on the report, if you were looking at this same report or the equivalent report for one of our other authorities, where it's a district, borough, unitary authority, you'll find it doesn't refer to section 73 of the Local Government Act 85. It refers to the section 151 of the Local Government Act, and it's a different year. I believe it's 79. Don't quote me on that one. I have that paper in front of me. I know that one, and I've presented it to those committees in due course.
No, that's answered my question. Thank you.
It's different legal entities which set out the requirements for the finance. Yeah.
Any questions? Both internal and external auditors have the right to sort of meet with us, privately without officers, and we will probably schedule maybe one of the future meetings for a meeting, perhaps maybe after the main Audit and Governance Committee meeting, for a short meeting with the internal and external auditors. The recommendation we have is to review and approve the CMAP internal audit charter, including the internal. Happy with that? Okay. The last item, or penultimate item, is the forward work plan.
So the forward work plan is comprised of certain things that we have to do, set by legislation and auditing practice. And then Richard has actually used the terms of reference in the committees, this committee. They effectively determine the kind of things that we will bring to you. It's usually an update from internal audit, update from external audit. We also have briefings, of course, on various issues. I know that we've got some in there, haven't we, for on treasury management. That's right. So really, we've got a reasonably full agenda for the coming meetings. But I think that if people feel as though you'd want to be looking at something, then we can. I'm sure we can find a slot, really.
Thank you, Michael. But perhaps because we have a number of new members, we can have maybe the terms of reference of the committee as well, maybe attached to the forward plan.
Yes. Yeah.
So that then ties in with our remit and why we're looking at. Any questions on the forward plan?
Can I ask when, I'm not quite sure where our year outs and ends, but are we going to look back over a year and to our own functioning as a committee to review its effectiveness?
Yes.
When is that going to take place in the plan?
So that will happen after the end of the year. So at our last meeting, I think it was the last meeting where we did our annual report of the audit committee, which covered sort of the previous. It wasn't a full year, but the previous period. So I expect it will probably be around possibly July, and then it goes to the EMCCA board shortly after that. So that is a review of the work we've undertaken, almost making sure that we've covered the remit that we had. We've covered what we expected to do. So we'll have a full year.
Are you covering the appendix? Is this covering the appendix as well?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, okay, I just want to ask a question. Is it just that Tees Valley and Cambridgeshire and Peterborough have expressed a willingness to participate, or was there some specific reason?
I can answer. Richard wasn't here at that meeting, so I think the question may have arisen because our previous Section 73 officer, he may have worked at those organisations, and I think that's where we said that.
And maybe on that basis, take this specifically out. Otherwise, it's straight jacketing you, isn't it?
Yeah. So maybe have comparison and look at other registers or other combined.
It doesn't matter where, but because you've used the word specifically, if they then say we're too busy, you're sort of stuck with committing yourself to it, aren't you?
Yeah. I vaguely recall a conversation where Councillor Edwards asked him a question, and I think he said, "I wrote those. I register or something."
I can't see the relevant point passage, but the gist of it was he was making a number of recommendations because it had worked well elsewhere. So I think that's what the context of specifically is.
The recommendation, I think, is fine. It just felt like you were straight jacketing yourself into an action that you might not actually be able to deliver on the specifics of those specific people.
We can reference it as best practice from elsewhere, perhaps.
Yeah.
So I'm getting a bit lost. That what was the name of that officer?
Nick Bell.
Right, yeah. So that's the point I want to raise. We've got Appendix B. I think this was me and you sort of saying, how do we demonstrate that we've had some kind of impact? So we were going to keep a log, and if you look at the log, loads of stuff down for Nick to do. Obviously, someone so is going to handle that, but that's from March, and there's absolutely no indication of progress on any of it. So is it just one of those things, or are we just going to get there? I mean, sure, we're not going to ignore it.
Yeah, and it's a good point, and it's maybe we just need to do a bit of a catch up on this, because as I spin down this list, I know that a number of these things, have been done and completed. We just need to do the administrative catch up. Some of those.
I've also kind of put a bit more detail into this action log, so that there's no data when it should be completed by. There's no kind of detail behind what specifically, what item it refers to, or things like that. So next time you see this, it'll be a bit more informative as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to push too hard on where's the smart detail. I'm just a sense of, are we going to get it done?
Yep, absolutely.
It's really, it's one of those things. It's in there. Well, at least it's in there. No doubt you're going to update it with all the profound statements we've made today about the correct use of the word "it's." But it just needs a little bit of a read.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. And then in a sort of separate meeting that I've had with Richard and Sanjay, we did talk about risk management and the operations behind the scenes in as the workings of risk management are actually probably happening with EMCCA. It's just that this document needs probably updating. Thank you. Any other observations? Thank you, everyone, and that's the end of the meeting. Sorry, Councillor. Sorry.
Sorry. First of all, apologies because I was late and these issues might have already been covered and not necessarily relevant. But item 6 on the statement of accounts, has anybody raised the issue about interest on monies. You know, the funding comes through and there's a lot of carryover expenditure. What's happening with those monies, and where are they? You know, are they accruing interest somewhere? Is there something about the ethical side of what is invested in? Has that been covered in any way?
As an AOB, so this is probably in the realm of the treasury management piece, and we did consider the treasury management update last time. Historically, and when we go back to 23-24, our initial funds that were provided by government to help us set up, and the initial grants, the initial investment fund, were managed on our behalf by Derbyshire County Council. Okay, and they effectively used their treasury management policy or strategy, which they're obliged to have, to invest our monies appropriately. And of course, they did pay us the interest that they received on those monies, and that did come through to us. During 24-25, we adopted our own treasury management policy, whereby we had a fairly limited what we call counterparty list, which effectively in those very early days said, okay, we'll only really put money with banks and with the government's debt management office, again accruing a rate of interest. Then to close, at the last audit committee, you approved a revised treasury management strategy that allowed us to extend, call that counterparty list, so that we now can deposit balances with other local authorities and, importantly, in money market funds. And we are starting to do that based on that endorsement by yourselves, and actually that being endorsed by the EMCCA board. So in a nutshell, it has evolved over the period covered, but absolutely we invest those balances prudently and with a view to maximising the interest that we receive on those balances.
So will that comes as some sort of report?
Yes. So when we bring a half-yearly treasury management update, and that's coming in November, that will give you a sense of how we've used those balances and what interest we've accrued, to demonstrate that we've applied that policy sensibly.
The other part of that question is about when schemes don't go ahead, they get carried over, and then they don't go ahead and they get carried over. Is there, where's that kind of monitoring of that situation where you know, effectively you're not delivering? You know, in local government happens a lot. Numerous factors come up, you don't deliver in time, and then it gets carried forward. But there has to be some kind of monitoring of that to, you know, performance against carryover of finances.
So typically that will be covered and reported, because typically that's related to our capital programme. That's typically reported through to the EMCCA board as part of our budget monitoring. So we take a report to, and in fact we're taking one to the 22nd board. If you're interested, do look at our budget monitoring report, which is due to EMCCA board on Monday. It's already published, so you can have a look at that. What that does is it sets out exactly that thing. It says, how are we performing against our revenue budget, but also against our capital budget? And you'll see actually very much there where we're thinking that actually things might slip and may need to be reprofiled. And effectively what we do, if there is slippage on the capital programme, then that is then reprofiled to a more sensible, realistic timetable. It's not this that budget monitoring is not a matter for this committee, it's a matter for the end
committee. The others on item 7 on business code of conduct, a little bit tenuous, the issue I'm going to raise, but it's in the kind of general description about, I'd say, professionalism and the effect of public and external partners and partners with EMCCA about expectations. And what I'm talking about is responding to communication. The soundings I've taken from people, well, I've not been looking for them, but when people go in conversation, they go, oh, right, I never get a response from EMCCA. I've sent quite a few emails and it's been very poor in the sense that as far as going like it's unprofessional. And so it's an issue that I think needs to be raised because it's reputational damage on the organisation. It's also other, you know, we're talking.
Chair.
Have we done this already?
So we've done all this.
Well, I apologize. I didn't realise.
I'm just going to make a point to you. If you're going to turn up late, then, you know, be here on time. Okay, because I've come a long way and you've turned up late and you started asking a load of questions that we've already covered. So can you just bring it up at the next meeting or just get here on time?
Councillor Payne, thank you. Yeah, unfortunately, as you said, Julie sort of left without that item.
Right, you could have just told me that.
Well,
but specifically, you know, what you just raised about communication, and maybe if you take that up with sort of Richard, sort of outside the, you know, after the meeting.
Yeah, no problem at all. And if you told me it was covered, I wouldn't have laboured on it.
Yeah, I mean, it is a separate point from what we discussed before. This reminds me, have we got corporate governance policies?
We have sort of governance, you know, the constitution is probably, you know, sorry, Sanjay.
You call me, but
that, you know, what the councillor was talking about comes under the code of conduct. It will be the officer member basically protocol that we're talking about. So the responding of the days, I don't think it comes under the code of conduct for the officers, man.
Thank you, Councillor. Sanjay, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Split the point. So thank you for raising the question in terms of inquiries. It's something that I've been thinking about a lot this week. So in terms of process for member inquiries, MP inquiries, public inquiries, we are thinking about that and talking about that as an organisation and as a group. So we're alive to that. We're aware of that, and it's something that I've picked up this week. So watch this space on that one. That is coming. In terms of governance, the constitution is the governance framework that everything sits around. There are different elements to all of this. There is the protocol, there's the officer code of conduct that Julie delivered today, but it all does neatly fit together in terms of overall governance, and it's a really important point in terms of how we're engaging with our stakeholders and how we're responding to things, and it all fits within that. It fits within all of them really, but then the process under development, I guess, is the point.
Can we have some kind of action for some kind of note on this, because it triggers something in my mind about something else that I'd heard and I didn't think to raise under the appropriate item. So, Chair, if you could look into it a little bit, please.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Process. Do you mean that the organisation is in the business of developing protocols which will cover the length of time it should take before minimum, you know, maximum length of time for responses, that sort of thing? Yeah.
Yes. So I think there's two elements to it. There's the process, so the expectation setting around this is how we deal with this type of inquiry, and whichever category that falls in. There's another side to it as well, is actually how we receive those inquiries. So things like, you know, really at a basic level in terms of dedicated inboxes, how we manage those internally, and what the process sits around those. So it's got two strings to it, essentially. That's what we need to work up, and we need to embed the process with the mechanism.
Thank you.
Chair,
Councillor Wright.
I was going to say in relation to you all,
Mayor Andy Abrams.
Mayor Andy, who turned up late for whatever reason. If there are items, observations, comments he wants to make, is there scope for him to do so outside of the meeting? Because I think it's important that we all have the opportunity to actually contribute and feed back into what is going on. you know, it's integral to us being effective as a committee. So is there scope for Andy to?
No, I appreciate that. I'll have to make a review afterwards and see what questions and what you have, and then we can see how best to. Thank you, everyone. Have a safe journey. Very much. Thank you. That's it.
Yeah. Finish off my afternoon.
Yeah.